Today marks the final review for our 10th anniversary throwbacks. I'll still be doing a live stream on Wednesday, but we're at the end of our month-long celebration. And what better way to end it than by going back to the very first video review I did, and a game that still holds my most watched PS Vita video. Something we never thought we were getting in the West considering the franchise's history. Here is my review for Tales of Hearts R on the PS Vita and PlayStation TV. The story of Hearts is around Core Meteor, an apprentice swordsman. After finding a girl named Kohaku washed up on the beach, they're attacked by a magical witch. While trying to heal Kohaku, he accidentally shatters her spirit, scattering her emotions around the world to influence and corrupt anyone they touch. He then goes on a journey to reclaim the shards and bring her emotions back. Now, I find the story of the game to be okay for a Tales game. It's very tropey, especially at first, but it is interesting with the idea of Kohaku's emotions running wild and being able to influence people and places. It's interesting, but nothing outstanding. When it comes to gameplay, this is a 3D action RPG. As you play, you'll explore an overworld and towns, as well as fighting lots of enemies in 3D arena-style combat. Now let's start with how this version is different. Hearts was originally a Japan-only Nintendo DS game that had side-scrolling 2D battles more akin to the Super Nintendo Tales of Phantasia and isometric 2D gameplay in the world and towns. For the Vita remake, they pretty much ditched all of this and turned it into a modern Tales game. The remake has 3D visuals, only select areas with isometric camera angles, and took out the DS linear roads between towns and replaced them with a traditional overworld map to freely explore as you go from town to town. They even took away the 2D side-scrolling combat, replacing it with a 3D system more akin to the Radiant Mythology and Tales of Xillia games. Main progression is like many JRPGs are known for. Tales may be an action RPG, but proceeds very similar to older classic role-playing games. You travel an overworld and are pointed to towns and dungeons by the story, collecting allies as you go, and fighting enemies and bosses to get to the next story objective. And we have a lot of RPG 101 stuff, like towns having shops to upgrade your gear and inn to rest in, and many NPCs to talk to for side quests and for advancing the main story. But there will be lots and lots of battles for you to fight, which is the main reason you play these games. Tales has become known for very fun action RPG battle systems, and I've loved the more 3D iterations ever since playing the Radiant Mythology trilogy on the PSP. The reason for this love of the combat is how it works. It's kind of like a 3D and 2D system all at once. You have free roam around the arena, as do your party members and enemies, and it shifts to a 2D perspective once you start attacking. You have a series of physical attacks to start combos, as well as skills and magic that can be seamlessly comboed into your attack strings. Once you get this system down, it can get a little crazy with starting a combo, throwing an enemy into the air, and just keep it going and going like you're playing a fighting game. We also have the same convenient targeting options that have been in these games for years. You can switch your targeting mode from manual to semi-auto for auto-locking onto enemies, or completely automatic, meaning that every character, including the one you're in charge of, will act on their own. Essentially the game playing itself. Now, I will admit that Hearts R's AI for this auto mode isn't nearly as good as some of the other Tales games I've played, but it can work well if you're needing to grind for levels and want to be more passive about it. And then we have the Soma system. Soma are the weapons the characters use, but they grow based on progression points you get from leveling up. This is how you get most of your stat improvements as opposed from just leveling. You place points into different categories of your Soma, leveling it up and netting you rewards in the form of stat boosts, new arts and skills to use in battle, and weapons for the characters to equip. I find this mechanic to be interesting, as you can do a bit more and choose how to enhance your characters, opting for putting points into fight if you're looking for more attack power for an upcoming boss, or just to unlock the next weapon for your character. And that brings us to difficulty. I wouldn't call this a painfully hard Tales RPG, but the spikes do happen pretty often, and at least until you get a full party, it's pretty challenging even on easy mode. You may not need to grind for every boss fight, but I would recommend it early on just with how difficult battles can be until you reach 4 party members when Beryl joins. And that brings us to content and length. Tales games are typically known for being lengthy, with the likes of Symphonia and Vesperia clocking in around 40 to 50 hours. Hearts R is a bit underneath those other games. It'll take you about 30 to 35 hours to complete the main story, which is still lengthy, but not as long as Tales fans may be used to. Next up is presentation, and even being a Vita game, it's alright. There are a few jaggies around the models, and I think the game looks fine in dungeons and towns. But the overworld map has textures that look really basic and bland. This is likely because they didn't really have anything to go off of, considering the original DS version of the game didn't have a world map. And it's worth noting that the previous DS remake, Tales of Innocence R, that did not come west for Vita, had the same bland looking overworld. I can't complain about performance though. The frame rate is nice and steady with a stable 30 FPS, both in and out of battle. Now, before we conclude, why did I choose this game for our throwbacks? This game was the first video review I ever made back when I had a basic $35 Logitech PC headset as a mic. Hearts R is also important because of the franchise. Tales has always had lots of handheld games, but barely any of them were localized. We got one GBA title out of 4, none of the DS games were translated. The PSP got 2 if you count Eternia only being localized in Europe, with the other 8 titles for the PlayStation Portable never coming over, including the Super Smash Bros. Inspired Tales of Versus. And even here on the Vita, there were remakes of both Tales of Innocence and Tales of Hearts, yet the latter was the only one chosen for translation. And it's pretty obvious that they only chose it because of the constant begging for it from the fanbase. They didn't even give it an English dub, making Tales of Hearts R the only localized Tales game in history to not feature English voice acting. Even the first Radiant Mythology crossover RPG on the PSP brought back its English voice actors. In conclusion, Tales of Hearts R brought a once-lost Nintendo DS RPG back to the handheld world, redone in modern fashion, offering the fast-paced arena combat the series has come to be known for with an official English translation. Now, on the downside, the story is just alright. The overworld textures have a lot to be desired even for a Vita game, and this is the first and only Tales game to be localized without an English dub. But if you enjoy the combat system and can be alright with a very tropey story, it's still fun to trek through and fight enemies in those 3D mixed with 2D arenas. PS Vita Reviews rates Tales of Hearts R a 7.5 out of 10. And that marks the finale of our 10th anniversary celebration. I hope you enjoyed these throwback reviews, and maybe we can do it again in 2033. I appreciate all the support, and as always, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.